Before we get started with this episode, we have a major favor to ask you.
If you could subscribe, like, and comment, especially with somebody that you'd love to see on the show, we would really appreciate that, and it would be amazing.
This helps us more than you know. In fact, once we hit 1,000 subscribers, and that is our goal, we are going to choose 2 of you to come to our very first Shoreline Show meetup with our team and our past guest.
And if you want more of the Shoreline Show, you can get on us on all the major audio podcast platforms.
Now, let's get on to the next episode. Welcome to this week's episode of the Shoreline Show, and we are super excited because we have Eric Hartman with us today. And Eric owns a chiropractic clinic in Jenison called Hartman Family Chiropractic.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing that?
We're coming up on 22 years now.
22 years.
That's wild.
Wow.
I'm close to almost half my life now doing this, so yeah.
I think when you're doing it that long, you're considered a pro, right?
Yeah, you would think at some point in
Seen
time
it all.
there's always things that you're constantly trying to improve and master upon, but in the end of the day, my line of work is more just getting to know people and figuring out what they want out of their care, and then trying to see if we can achieve it or if we've got to bring other people involved in it. So.
Awesome.
That is cool.
Yeah, so we'll probably get more into talking about that, but
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit more about you personally. So who's Eric Hartman?
Wow, in a nutshell. So that's kind of changed over the years too as I've grown up and matured. I mean, I was a pretty quiet, introverted child in high school and didn't really come out of my bubble until college when I transitioned from being an engineer at University of Michigan to not wanting to have anything to do with computers and being more personable and social. And my faith became much more important to me in that transition too. And being a Christian and valuing my relationship with Jesus and then how that comes down to serving other people there. So that's kind of my whole background comes down to is serving others, and healthcare is a great way to be able to do that. And being a business owner is just kind of a different way of doing it nowadays too.
Right. Yeah. So healthcare and chiropractic is a different kind of an arm of healthcare. What directed you into that?
First thing, my uncle's a chiropractor, so I actually have 7 family members that are chiropractors.
Okay.
Ron Wilcox in Alpine. He practices with my cousin Kelly. His brother Randy is in Kentwood, and his daughter Amy practiced with him for quite a while. And then my oldest cousin Nicole married a gentleman by the name of Trent, and they're Tiltons, but still Wilcoxes. They're in Cascade in Greenville.
Okay.
And then my younger cousin Ronnie, or Ron now, bought a practice out in Zealand. So we kind of have the community kind of covered in terms of our family blueprint. But in the end of the day, I always say I'm like the black sheep because I'm not a Wilcox. I'm married into it there. But no, I just really enjoyed it. Yeah. Really liked the ability, kind of like an engineer. I'm kind of fixing things to an extent, educating people and teaching people. But in the end of the day, it's much more of a social job. I always tell people, 75-90% of my visit is connecting with them, seeing what's going on in their life and what's going on in their health. And then at the end, I deliver a service, and that's it there. So it's been a journey, definitely with ups and downs. But it definitely would never take it back, and it's definitely
especially in a world that likes to cover things up with like medicines and
correct. It's a huge matter. I was fortunate to being much more natural in a sense. I'm actually updating our website and talking about family care and talking about the benefits of. Every day somebody asks me how young do you start seeing a chiropractor, and usually birth. My son Ryan was adjusted at like 8 minutes old, and all my nieces and nephews were adjusted within their first couple of days of life in the hospital, and gone up to see a few friends who have had babies.
So they're coming right out, and you're
right on out. And have you ever seen any videos of a baby being born?
That's
wild. It's
traumatic
not all,
experience.
I'm about ready to say. It's tough, and your stories of forceps and vacuums and OBs and pulling on the baby and what type of a torsion that puts on their neck, and it's just and that's the thing, right? I love taking care of anybody who comes in my office, but when you take a little brand new human that has all the potential in the world and they're experiencing issues and dysfunction and disease and colic and all that type of stuff, be able to kind of like fix a couple short circuits, and it changes the whole house. Not only is the baby doing better, the mother's no longer frantic. Everybody else is not there too. So that is probably the most rewarding. That's why there's such a huge upflow of people in pediatrics and family care versus the more physical therapy-driven back pain and those type of things. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it makes sense once you fix the problem, the whole body starts to work on its own too, right? Like if you have something that's off and it all starts to function in the way it's supposed to, I can see where people, I think especially the government and the media has definitely tried to steer us away from the healthy ways, right? Because there's a lot of money in medicine now, right?
I mean, sadly, you hate to compare a lot of the pharmaceutical world to being like a drug
Yeah,
dealer.
for sure.
But at the end of the
Drug
day,
cartel.
the best way for them to
sure.
maintain their customers is to keep having dependencies and having them on to be told that you have to take this medicine for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And then by the time you're on it for a couple of years, then there's a side effect, and then you have to take another med in order to cover that up. And in the end of the day, there's definitely a place for those things.
Yeah.
But it's wading into what can you do natural, what can you do with your own diet and your exercise and those things. Can you be more natural there and lifestyle choices instead of waiting until things are completely broken and have to be dependent upon there. And that's where we're in such a crisis nowadays and why everything's more expensive in terms of the cost of insurance and the cost of care and disease state there. We need to prevent it and stop being on the back end of always having to treat the symptoms.
Yeah.
So it's a journey, it's a battle, and it's something.
Are you guys gaining a momentum on that? I don't know if it would be considered a political front when it comes to what you guys are able to do, and because I know there was always this war between, is it DOs? Is that what was it?
And the big thing with DOs nowadays is there's such a small percentage of them who actually manipulate or adjust. They pretty much have switched over to being almost identical to a medical doctor.
Right.
It's not the way they were formed back in the 1800s, where they were much more into manipulation for blood flow and other components there. They weren't too far different than chiropractic back then, but that changed over time given the unfortunate crisis of disease management that we have nowadays.
Yeah.
So
I was just watching something on the internet about how, and I don't know how true this is, and I would assume that maybe you've done some research knowing who you are, but the whole idea of the Rockefellers and the petroleum thing, they were, is that true?
I mean, it's hard to refute a story, but again, when you can influence and you talk about money and position and stuff like that, it's hard when you talk about lobbying money and putting and changing the way people are educated and what they're focused in on. But hopefully people now, with the vast amount of knowledge we have, people are going into medicine as a much more open-minded, unless they're going to be a specialist to understand, to treat the person and collaborate. We're seeing a lot more collaboration with primary care doctors nowadays, as well as insurance companies, even Priority Health. Medicare has been known for, obviously, you're dealing with disease management and maintenance, right? You take a blood pressure med, you take a diabetes med. Well, now Priority Health is on the cutting edge where they actually have supportive or maintenance chiropractic adjustments. So that's
pretty cool.
That's the first one of
That's
its
a huge
kind.
win.
They have unlimited medically necessary care for back pain and other things like that, but they can come in once a month and get adjusted, and for the most part, no questions asked, because we're treating then on a proactive approach and stuff like that. So that's great. We're working on trying to get other insurance companies. I'm involved with our state board through our Michigan Association of Chiropractors to try to further that in terms of people's, because again, people are always like, oh, it's an additional cost. So it might cost the insurance company $500 a year, but we find that by people who come to us regularly, they have a lot less cost in insurance down the road.
Right.
So same thing with why they did your exam, your wellness
I guess I never thought about, but the insurance companies can work on they're actually kind of would be working for you. They're trying to get their costs down.
If they could break away from the long-term medical model. Because again, at the end of the day, if people come in and see us, they're much less likely to have back surgery and much less likely to be dependent on an opioid or pharmaceutical meds and stuff like that too. So I think they get the picture, but there's pressure because you're taking away the patient from regularly having to go into those other courses. So it's a battle, but it's slowly ticking up.
Yeah, for sure. And so a lot of these medications also help get you on other medications. I mean, just watch a commercial once and see all, like, hey, you're solving your headache, but you might have this, this, and this. It's wild. It's crazy.
Half the commercial is talking about what all the side effects
All the side effects,
are.
yep. Yeah, and
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So that's the world we
Well,
live
in
in.
my family, we're very careful on like what we take and what we put into our body. Like one of my, even something as simple as acne right now, one of my oldest sons has terrible acne, and just working through it, and you go to a doctor and they're talking about possibly putting him on Accutane, and my wife took that when she was young, and when she was young, and to this day it affects her. Like her hands are super dry, and it really, because that stuff's nasty stuff. It's really
the potent med. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So then it's like if you can turn around and not have to deal with repercussions when you're older, because you can turn around and fix some of that stuff. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know if you can fix acne, but you know what I mean.
That's a hard one. I mean, obviously when you're going through puberty and the body's changing, obviously we get the whole change of
We're
the skin
finding
and the
tanning's
pores.
helping him.
Yeah,
Just something as simple as tanning, not a ton, but just a little
Just
bit.
getting some vitamin D, getting some exposure and stuff like that. It's massive. It's incredible how much that affects things. But everybody's so into fixing the right now, and that's obviously what that medicine does. Obviously you don't want any scarring and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you take it now, but then what type of effects are you going to have on you for the rest of the forever?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's just everything. That's not just our healthcare. It's like we believe we can play God and fix problems instantly, and the body, I believe, is naturally will heal itself if you take care of it right. I'm a firm believer of that, and I think a lot of science is coming out showing that even how the body works and some of the things within the body, with like what's the word I'm thinking for, like redox signaling molecules, and a lot of these little, like the cells broken down to like small little portions of how they work and how they heal each other. You know, it's kind of interesting too.
We just need to not have any interference. That's kind of what we've always talked about. We want to try to get the toxins out of the body and get the interference out of the body and let the body maintain itself until it gets in a disease state. When it can't, then from there we got to start using other means.
Yeah,
all backwards in the last 40 to 50 years.
Hopefully we make some changes. I try to watch some of that stuff, like even like the hair gel we put in our hair and all this stuff, all these chemicals that like deodorants and all this stuff that you leak into your body, and it's just it's only helping.
And you name it, it's
crazy.
The studies that come out there just is shocking.
Yeah, yeah. We just download this app. There's a lot of apps now that are pretty cool. It's called a Yucca app. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, yep.
It's actually pretty cool. You can just walk through Meijer and you just like literally scan things, and it'll tell you if it like what's in it, and it'll break it down and say this actually will cause cancer. And it'll actually break it down, all of the stuff within it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you stay out of the center of the store.
Shop
You always go around
outside.
the outside. That's usually what I tell everybody.
What I'm noticing at Meijer, especially some of their cheap stuff, is actually more healthy. Like their cheaper breads actually have less stuff in them and less preservatives and less craziness in them, which is actually
don't eat breads anymore.
So, that's probably not a bad idea too.
Yeah. So when because you talked about you were in school and you were headed in one direction.
Yep, had in engineering and decided after about a year and a half that just me and computers and all that science, not to mention at University of Michigan how competitive it is.
Yeah.
I got some friends that have done some amazing things all over the world in engineering, but it just didn't click as advanced as I was in science and math. I was just losing myself in that. So we switched over. I transferred to Grand Valley, and which is much more of a health sciences based school. And crazy enough, I actually have a psychology degrgy of all things.
Okay.
There's a good little balance while I was taking all the rest of the. Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. All the pre-med classes. So psych is such a big component. We always talk about the causes of illnesses are traumas, toxins, and thoughts. And we talk about the negativity in our body. So we discuss that quite often in terms of how people are battling life. And how much that can be a cancer to everything that's going on there. So it works out good. Yeah, I went to Iowa for 3 years and did my time out in the Quad Cities and came back and already. It's interesting because back then, it wasn't. Kids get out of school now in chiropractic, and they probably more than half of them are looking at. They're not interested whatsoever in starting their own practice. Back when I started, it was probably 90% of the doctors came out, and it was expected that you were just going to open up your own office, and they had very little business class to be able to take. So it's a whole different hat being a doctor than being a business owner.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I have a lot of my colleagues who are incredible clinicians and horrible business people. And maybe the only reason why they are surviving in business is because they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
And then you got some people who are pretty poor clinicians, but because they have a great business mind, that they can kind of, in the proverbial, sell iced Eskimos, that they can teach people, and of course then they start hiring other people who are better at and are more empathetic into caring for people.
Yeah, you see some of these. I mean, there are some of these mega companies out here. Even, I mean, in every industry, they're good business marketers, right? And then they have people working for them that are professionals in that in their industry. And I suppose you probably have a lot of that. But I would say, in healthcare, I would think that you'd want somebody that owns the business, that cares about the community. I would assume in your realm, you'd be better off like that.
You definitely get the people who are owning are investing in the community. Now the question is, do you get the next tier of employees doing the same thing? Because that's the hard part when you become an employee and you're a provider. Same thing with like medical doctors. They come in, they check in, they see their patients are done. They really didn't sign up to go to a chamber meeting or go to a networking event or get involved in other things like that. So it's always that balance of what they want out of it. They just wanted to be a doctor. They didn't want to have to do all the other stuff.
And a lot of employees that are doing that don't see the value in doing those things either.
Yeah, it's like going to church and going to Meyer and walking in there and being able to people come up to me and talk. We got done with church yesterday and was sitting up front. My wife sings at our church, and I had a family came up, and usually they come up to talk to her. But it was a young patient. I think she was a 6-year-old who's a patient of mine, and came up and she wanted to say hi. They haven't been in a little while there, so just wanted to connect with them and that. So it was just kind of cute to be able to have that living life thing. That's kind of it when you live in a smaller community.
With people.
I mean it's a journey. You're walking together. That's kind of like my perfect vision. I mean, I like to handle people and their pain, but to be able to have somebody come in on a preventative basis, on a monthly basis, is kind of where my ideal patient would be.
Well, I feel like that's where it used to be. I think healthcare, I'm watching these old time shows. Like, I have to watch something stupid at night, so I watch them the Waltons right now. I'm watching, right? Where
the doctor comes with a
and you're like,
medical bag
I think you will a little bit need that. Like, you think about for years now. You walk in and you're like, okay, if I need a problem. I don't think doctors are about covering, a lot of doctors, I shouldn't throw this on their bus, but they're about covering up a problem, right? So you come in, you're like, okay, I have a broken leg, fix my broken leg. Okay, I have depression, give me some depression medicine. I got ADD, give me some medicine, and then you don't have to see them again forever, pretty much, if you don't want to. And the
unless
line
it stops working.
And then the line of industry you're in, I think it's a little bit different, which it's the old school. It's like, hey, we want to get to know you. We want to know how your mental health is, your physical, all these things. And then over time, it's like taking care of people, which I think is kind of special and kind of cool. I don't think you can really globalize that too much. I think you want to keep it super, I would assume, tight, local, knowing your people. Oh, you had a baby? Oh, I'll stop by and check it out, make sure, maybe or come by and we'll check it out and make sure everything's good, kind of thing.
90% of our patients live within 5 miles of the office. So
That's
it's
perfect.
just, back when we had COVID, we were dealing with phone calls and texting, back before texting platforms became a lot more common. And I uploaded my entire patient database up into Google. And we started using their Google texting system first before we've gone through a couple iterations. And when you do that, if you ever pull up a Google map, every address you have in your account pins on the map. And it was just really kind of neat to
see where
to see that, right?
at.
Like, oh my goodness, I have 5 out of 6 people in this cul-de-sac are patients of mine, and just kind of you kind of see that how that's worked through the networking, and people get talking at the mailbox and stuff like that, and it's just kind of a neat thing to be able to collect to an extent a community in a neighborhood or a family of generations of people coming in. And I mean, I've got patients that have been coming in to see me that we grew up with since I started 22.
Cool.
Oh yeah. It's always interesting talking to my staff because the account numbers are like literally 3 digits. And now we're like on 5 and 6 digit numbers or letters and numbers combinations there. So people they see this like patient 181, and it's like, which really isn't 181 because it's really, we started at like 100.
Yeah. So you're 81st client.
Yeah. It's just crazy how that worked and stuff like that. So, but it's just neat to see that, and you start you take care of somebody, and then they graduate, and then they get married, and they have kids, and then they bring, somebody who I saw when they were 2 years old now is bringing their 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a neat like you said, going back to the olden days, you grew up with them, you live life with them, and you care for them, and that's kind of part of what it is.
It's that take a village kind of thing, bringing it back, which is pretty cool.
Yep, love it.
Instead of getting rid of it, it's embracing it.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in Wyoming, so not too far away. But when we were looking at locations to start my practice, I was at Grand Valley, so it was kind of a good little conduit here in the Jenison area there. So I came through that Cottonwood-Baldwin corridor all the time coming home, and there was a strip mall that had a spot available and was a very reasonable price. So I was halfway through my last trimester in grad school and doing my internship here out in Holland, and I signed my lease and I got my phone number. So I went back for graduation and already had my business card. I didn't have my license quite yet, but I had my business card and was ready to go.
Ready to go.
5 days after I graduated, March 1st of 2002.
You started.
And 5 days later, I saw my first patient. So it took that long to get my license, which is quicker then than it was now.
Yeah.
I hate to say the administrative delays of profiling with insurance companies and bureaucracy with the government, getting licenses and transcripts and fingerprints and all these things, blood sample. I mean, it's just crazy what they need to know. And just started and was I answered my own phones. I checked people in and out. And
was it just you? No,
it was just me. Yep.
Just you.
And then after a few months, I started in March. And that fall, I brought on a patient of mine's daughter who was doing a co-op through the high school at Jenison. And she worked for me which was great because she worked a class in the mornings and she worked the afternoons, which is busier.
Yeah.
And then she worked with me for a while. And then eventually, I think I hired her after she graduated and then just kind of look at the ebbs and flows of the employees we've had over the years. And it's just been kind of a journey there. And then actually I was lured out to Holland for a year and a half to go work with a colleague out there. His brother had left.
Okay.
And he wanted me to take over, and I loved it. It was much more laid back. I worked 4 days a week, and kind of like I mentioned before about not really
business
having
ownership's like 7.
Yeah, it was different. But I just didn't feel as invested in Holland.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I didn't move out there. And then a year and a half later, I came back and reset, and kind of has grown since then. And and then 11 years ago, we moved and doubled our space. And
you have a nice space.
Yeah,
now.
brought on a bunch of. I've had massage in my business for a long time. Then we brought on more rehab things. I had a yoga studio for almost 10 years, and then COVID and our governor's policies for a lot of those things it was already on its way out, but really kind of ended it. And then we did a remodel for my 20th, and now we have a golf simulator in there and do some golf rehab through Titleist Performance Institute, and just trying to find different niches. So we talk again about wanting to be preventative and wellness, but in the end of the day, it's kind of fun to be able to connect a passion of golf, playing collegiate golf and playing competitive golf, and be able to care for and take care of a lot of the top amateur golfers in the area.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yep. Just again,
meet them where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, then who cares? At lunchtime, I bring my golf clubs out, and if nobody's in the hitting simulator in the winter, I can hit some balls too, and have some fun with 3 friends over and go play 9 or 18 holes. So just
what kind of system do you have?
It's called Unicore. So the TrackMan's been the big popular one.
Yeah.
I like this one just because it was ceiling mounted, and for the price point, it really worked out better for our space and for lefties and righties. Yeah. So if somebody's a lefty and you have a floor model, you have to swing it around to the other side there too. So
I got one of the True Golf setups in my barn, which is pretty nice. Yeah.
So they're just fun. Lots of fun, and obviously for those that are much more serious about golf, they can go and hit balls and work on their game through the winter, because of course we're kind of locked down here for 4 or 5 months. So just another way to build business and to attract foot traffic, and golfers are...
Do you just have clients that want to come in and just use it, do they?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to obviously expand to the golfing community, but you get people just by natural foot traffic that see it and go, tell me about this. But now there's a bunch of other places in the last year, it's like I got it, and then like now 3 or 4 other places in the area now have it as well. So it's interesting, just like the same thing with the yoga studio. I got the yoga studio started, and then within that next year we had 2 or 3 other places in Huntsville and Granville that opened too. So So what can you do? I mean, it's the nature of competition and business, and just got to offer something a little differently than they offer, and a little more one-on-one capabilities versus places that have 6 hitting bays and stuff like that. So
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's awesome.
So tell me, how did you meet your wife?
Well, that's always a fun one. So my wife is a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner now, but she was working down in the emergency room at Spectrum, at Butterworth. And kind of the precursor to Facebook is MySpace. And it was kind of a mistaken identity. She was friends with a bunch of people that I knew that worked in there, and she mistaken me for one of the emergency room doctors initially. And then it was kind of funny. She made a couple comments on a post I had on a Saturday. We talked online on Sunday, and then
On MySpace?
On MySpace, yeah. And then on Monday we met at Panera in Granville. And then we had dates on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and 3 months later I asked her to marry me. So
Wow, that was quick.
yeah, when you know, man. So
Wow.
so I was 29 and she was almost 25, and we were kind of both settled. She was finishing her master's degree, and she was a strong Christian.
Does
and
MySpace even exist anymore?
I think it does. It just is it's still more music driven than
Yeah.
the other ones there too. But yeah, so it's just kind of a funny thing. And now obviously it's very common for people to meet on dating sites now.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And of course they had a couple dating sites back then, but we just met.
Yeah.
And she's like, at least I had my own website, so I was like a real person.
Yeah.
So you have to worry about all of that and the
Yeah.
Weird stuff,
representations.
yeah.
Yeah.
Get somebody that can really see that you're who you say you are, especially back
Right.
pushing 20 years ago. We've been together 18 years. So
Yeah. And how many kids do you have now?
we have 3. We have one biological, and we actually fostered and adopted a couple of brothers.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
kind of part of our blended family. They're the oldest of 5. So there's 2 siblings over in Elto, and then their youngest, the sister, is in Granville. So they kind of grew up. We're like cousins, but
Okay.
so it's kind of neat. We do sleepovers once a month, and like their little sister goes to church at Chapel Point with us, so we see her pretty often. So just a very unique blended family, and
Nice.
I got 3. It's like I got 3 boys within 20 months of each other, in
Wow.
6th, 5th, and 4th grade. So if I just tell people 3 boys in that demographic, they start questioning like,
How did that
how did that happen? But,
Exactly.
yeah, when the brothers are 15 months apart, and
Yeah.
this is 5 to 6 months older.
Yeah.
But it's a ride, and we're in the trenches of sports and activities and
How old are
trying
they, you
things
said?
out. 10, 11, 12.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
Did then
fun.
any of them talk about doing what you do?
A little. I think my middle one has the most kind of empathetic, caring personality. So we'll see what.
Yeah.
Obviously, we go through the rigors of school and
Yeah,
things like
they're
that.
still young.
So there's a long ways to go, and we'll see where
It'll
their
fly by
passions. He's got more of a desire to be a professional athlete, but who doesn't at that age?
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Be an actor, professional athlete, or a professional singer. So
Right.
we'll see what it has in store and
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
they
that's
go.
cool.
So tell me about that process of foster and adoption for you. How did that come about?
So we had fertility issues. So we were fortunate enough that even through IVF that we were able to get Ryan, and our second round didn't work, and we just kind of prayed heavily, like what is our next steps?
Yeah.
I mean, are we just meant to be a parents of one child?
Yeah.
And we have tons of people in our circle who have fostered and adopted,
Yeah.
and pretty large families, and we just kind of.
Yeah.
And of course, it's really like the cliche is if you're going to foster or adopt is to get a newborn or a baby, and we're like,
Right.
like we did that baby thing once. We're not. I mean, I
We can
love babies. I
skip
love.
by.
Don't get me wrong. I love babies.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, obviously, you hear about the. You're up in the middle of the night. I mean, I had 3 or 4 parents this morning.
Yeah.
Up twice for the baby and the change in the diapers and you name it there. So we literally Ryan was 3 and we were literally looking at, or I think it was 5, and we wanted to get like two siblings right that are between the ages like 3 and 5. We didn't have to do potty training.
Right.
And kid you not, we did it. We went through our licensing. A little bit of a delay because we couldn't get all the classes finished in the sequences, so we had to kind of break them up into 2 quarters.
Yeah.
And then we had the agency through Wellspring in Kent County call us and go, all right, your license is going to be active in a couple days. Oh, and we have 2 boys for you. And they were the oldest of 4 at the time because
Yeah.
the biological
You're like,
mother
"Whoa,
was
that came
pregnant.
quick."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they showed up and they had 2 little, and it's fun. It's interesting because we have a lot of friends of ours who have a little diverse family. background.
Yeah.
So we were like, oh, look at that. We like kind of like spread diversity, right? Good old white Christian Dutch people over here, even though I'm not Dutch. But and of course, God humors me and brings me the two palest, blondest kids that exist. So that is different than a little bit more of the English German background that my wife and I have with darker skin and tan real well. So SPF 50/75 has been our normal life to make sure that they don't get burned. But and we thought about continuing on. In fact, the agency was actually half hoping we would take all of the kids, but kids were never abused, but they were neglected. They had young parents that had 5 kids, and were dealing with drugs, and they just never had a whole lot of attention. So when we decided to keep them broken up, it made more sense because they would have individual attention. So the other two boys are with another couple whom we met during our training, which is great. And again, a crazy God thing. Like we really didn't hit it off with a whole lot of anybody during our training. Like half the people who are doing the foster training are family members who are going to get their brother's kid or their cousin or something like that. So we met this other couple, and they it's hard to believe that we showed up to the first appointment for the parent visitation, and they were there. They were getting the other kids.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Cool. We got them on a Friday, and I want to say the following Tuesday we realized that they were there. So just a neat.
That's pretty cool. That's an awesome story.
Thing. And then then the baby came along, and this young woman, single woman who was a nanny, Becca is her name. She had a heart for caring and did this, and didn't want to be limited to I haven't been married yet, and she just went out on a whim, have a great family structure. She took the baby girl, and is actually finishing up fostering and adopting a little boy now too. So so it's just been great, and we're part of Chapel Point has a adoption and foster committee, ministry. So we've been part of that in terms of mentoring and it's just a crazy huge need out there. And it's not just people who are going to do it, people who want to babysit for people who are doing it, people want to give somebody respite care, or not just meals and prayer. It's just a crazy. Huge need that I think people just get into their own little blinder box and just kind of forget about it, or just say that's not part of my life to be able to do it there. So it's been a challenge there.
Yeah, that's a cool story for sure. It's not turning a blind eye to needs that are out there and be able to realize that everybody has a role that they can play in it for sure.
And JJ, the oldest, was very clumsy when he was younger. And after 2 or 3 months, we kind of got permission to start adjusting him. And it was amazing within the first 2 or 3 adjustments how that changed. He's only tripping over his own feet. And fortunately, they were never really sickly. But, I mean, my kids have been blessed. Hopefully, we're practicing what we preach. But my kids rarely ever miss school. And it's just kind of been just part of who we are to be more of on the natural side of things and being really diligent with their sleep and minimizing their tech and all these things to know that, nope, you're going to miss. It's more of a mental health day than it ever is, or a reward than it is going to be because you're actually ill.
Right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So what are your hopes for the future?
So halfway through, you figure what's going to happen the next 20 years. I got my lease all locked up here for the next 20 years. So until I'm like 65, our office should be pretty situated. A bunch of stuff on the horizons. There's a possibility to buy a practice in Caledonia. Got a lot of my colleagues in their 60s are looking at retiring. And as we've mentioned in the past about we try to find somebody who's going to take over a business. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So if we can find the right, again, associate doctor to go over there to kind of relieve them of the management of their office, and they want to stay on and work part-time. That's kind of my job. Right. My goal in life when I get into my 60s would be to go down to 3 part days and just show up, be the doctor, work, see 100 patients a week or something like that, and just people that I've grown up with, and then have somebody else make the day-to-day decisions on running the business there. So we'll see what happens. Possibly looking at maybe merging with a colleague in the area here that's looking to expand and to get a bigger space, and their current space isn't there. So preferably waiting on an opportunity there to kind of look at reinvent. After 22 years in business, to be able to get somebody who is maybe equally yoked in terms of motivation and energy, and not to mention obviously the benefit of being able to split overhead and that stuff like too. So that's kind of a big thing over the next, both of those things in the next 6 months that we're looking at trying to land.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are huge. Yeah.
Those
So,
are huge things.
Other than that, we'll see how. I have 2 doctors that work for me now, Alec and Jacob, 2 great men, and they've both been practicing about 2 years. So just continue to try to mentor them and try to get them to again connect more and to transition patients from, we call it active care to supportive care. So there's always like a hands-on when you're a small business, even though we have, and I'm fortunate I have an office manager been with me about 3 years now, Lexi, and she does a wonderful job at running the staff and handling the insurance and letting me focus in on some of the growth-minded decisions as well as dealing with patient care. Because at the end of the day, as much as I enjoy being a business owner, it's not my passion.
Yeah.
I got colleagues of mine who literally they weren't caused to be a chiropractor. They just happened to get into it, and I love being the doctor. I love the relationships. So the being the business owner is just kind of, I'll call it a necessary evil to an extent, but it's something that I do decent with, but definitely am not a business master like a few of my colleagues are, who've got 10 offices and who are mentoring other doctors and stuff like that too.
Right. Yeah.
That's cool. What would you tell somebody that would want to get into that business?
Obviously you got the two. Obviously the question is, you say the business.
Yeah.
So the question is, do they want to be a chiropractor or do they want to be a business owner? So that's the logistic they got to do there. A lot of kids who are going to be athletic trainers or physical therapists are starting to position more towards chiropractic because we have a lot more open-ended licensing. We have a lot more autonomy and ability to do a lot more, which is much more attractive to some people. But in the end, if people want to show up and work 40 hours a week, then it's hard to say chiropractic is what you want to do, because it's not. Chiropractic is not a faith, but it's definitely not it shouldn't be a 9-to-5 job. It's something that you're living and you're breathing and you're talking to it, and it should excite you while you're talking to people about getting healthier and doing something for themselves.
That's cool. That's awesome.